Jr. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. What's going on, man?
Good, brother. How are you? Good.
Likewise, King T over there, man. I'm feeling good. Feeling good. It's definitely been an adventure. A life adventure. I'm feeling good over here. How are you guys in California?
Good, man. It's if I'm being honest, I've just been all over the place. I was up in Sacramento earlier this week. Part of that is, man, I mean, so much is going on. I've recently begun expanding on my writing to begin to incorporate aspects of filmmaking. And so I've been studying this, or shadowing, I should say, this master artist out here in LA, this dude named Akinsanya Kambon, who, Greg, we want to talk about mindset, bro. Like, this dude was a former Black Panther, Vietnam War vet, gets back from Vietnam where he was a combat illustrator, and he gets accused of murdering a cop, and ultimately beats the charge, and has just, when I say like modern day Indiana Jones, like he is Indiana Jones, like just yeah, and so he's been really gracious and allowing me to spend a ton of time with him. And, I'm working on just trying to get his story out there. He's a little bit older. And so, got a chance to go up to Sacramento's where he's from, and just got back yesterday, and then like right back into the regular, the other stuff that I got going on. You feel me? So, yeah, man. What about you? What's going
Man,
on? Oh, sorry, go for it.
I feel like, no problem, man. I feel like what you're saying is like the embodiment of entrepreneurship, business, professionalism, in the sense of, boom, here we are having a life blowing, mind blowing experience. And then bloop, the next day, we're back into that transition. Like, how quick can we transition back into our flow state? That's very powerful to hear you talk like that. So that's super exciting, man. I'm happy for you, and definitely to see what's coming in the future, man. That's
Heck
awesome.
yeah, yeah, man. And what about you, brother? Like you got such, I mean, you're on the fatherhood adventure, which requires you to be like the most flexible, I'm assuming, you know what I'm saying? So talk to me, what's been
Mhm.
going on in your world?
Man, I've come to discover like my personality type, and it's helped me progress, transform, reach amazing goals. But it's also very judgmental and critiquing.
Mm.
And so where I am right now is learning how can I let go or turn that knob down a little bit so I can be more in a flow for myself, teammates, my spouse, even my baby. Because just before hopping on the call, she's screaming, and I'm just like, here I am going into my type one. Oh my God, is the sound going to echo? Is it going to be? So I'm just
Right.
like, hey, we just got to go with it. If she
That
wants to
part.
be a part of this Zoom, she's going to be a part of this Zoom. We don't control that. And
Yeah.
that's literally where my life has been. Molly was born, my baby girl, back in July. Man, living out here in Mexico, we literally just moved into our home in the city. We had to escape the cartel, living in the country. So here we are with the newborn, and the cartel decides to come in. They're killing, they're kidnapping, and we're just like,
Oh,
we need to go.
are you
Yeah,
serious?
yeah, man. Yeah.
Oh, talk so, oh man, I mean, and we're gonna get into the meeting or to the interview, but what has that journey been like? I mean, I believe your wife and her family are from Mexico. Is that
Mhm.
correct? Yeah. And so you decided to, when you guys got married, you decided to move out there, and how much of an adjustment has that been for you?
So in the beginning, when I moved to Mexico City, to answer your question, yes, her family is from Mexico City. She's born and raised in Mexico City. I started out coming out to visit, going on trips, and then next thing you know, I'm living here. It's been almost like a reality show. I call it like my version of 90 Day Fiance. But it's very interesting, like being in Mexico and not really fully understanding what's going on in the United States. Whether you're talking business, well, business we're good, but like elections, politics, the bureaucracy, those types of things. To me, it's been out of sight, out of mind. So I've been coming from a place of sympathy with a lot of the people that I work with, just to see what you guys are dealing with there. But man, everything has been go with the flow. Go with the flow. You're not in control. And the moment that I feel that, the moment I work hard, I'm gaining control, the universe, God is just like, yeah, think again, like, let me show you something else. So literally constantly going with the flow. But one thing that I can tell you, T, is if I get caught in the emotion, I'm no longer flowing. So is understanding or becoming aware, what emotion am I in? Because I'm in the emotion, I'm no longer in my flow state. So let me maneuver through these emotions, this discomfort, whatever it may be, so I can get back grounded into my flow state. So it's definitely been interesting to say the least, but we're making it happen, man. We're really making it happen.
That's right. I love it. I love it. Well, let's go ahead and get started. And so, for anyone that is catching the replay of today's video, I'm super excited to be interviewing Gregg Clark, who is the founder of Grow With Gregg. And Grow With Gregg is a consultancy and business that empowers men to break through their trauma and mental barriers. And I'm really excited about today's conversation. To give some additional background, Gregg and I are long-term friends. We went to high school with one another, and I've had very similar journeys in lots of different ways that, I'm sure we're going to get into. But I think the parallel, certainly comes in the form of some of the mental fortitude that I think I recognize in both of us. Some of that is related to our individual health journeys, which again, we'll talk through, and ultimately how some of those practices have then impacted the way that we approach problem solving, particularly as business owners, as entrepreneurs, and the way that we show up for our clients. And so today's conversation, Mindset Over Everything, is about building resilience and leadership for entrepreneurs. And really what I want us to think about as we put our thinking caps on and listen to today's conversation is, what does it take to really show up, right? What does it take to break through and stay the course as a founder, a creator, or as a community leader? We just heard what Gregg just got done describing, which, moving to a new place in order to, be there for his family and to build a new life, and how important it is to, stay grounded and to stay afloat versus responding to the adversity that we know is going to come at us, right? And so in today's conversation, we're sitting down with Gregg, again, founder of Grow With Gregg, a transformational mindset and business coaching platform that's focused on empowering men to overcome anxiety, trauma, and limiting beliefs while building purposeful, resilient businesses. And so whether you're struggling with imposter syndrome or navigating tough transitions in your business, this episode is going to focus on exploring mental frameworks, routines, and foundational work that entrepreneurs can lead or use, I should say, in order to lead with clarity and confidence. And so, on that note, Gregg, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, about Grow With Gregg, and how maybe you even became an entrepreneur? We'd love to hear a little bit about your story.
Definitely, man. Let's take it back. And I want to let you know, T, as well as the people listening, coming in on the replay, that I'm going to let this flow. I know you gave me the script as far as what to expect on the outline, but whatever comes from spirit, we're just going to put out there, man. I know you can vibe with that. So let's.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Man, ever since high school, I've had the mindset of an entrepreneur. My mother, she had a childcare, her own business. My aunt, she was doing her own thing with hair. And my uncle, still in his 60s, he's one of the well-known DJs in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
So here I am growing up and seeing everybody doing their own thing. We were able to get together in the summers, do family vacations, whether it's my cousins and I playing sports as children, the parents were there. So even as a child, I'm subconsciously learning what it looks like for your parents to be available and not necessarily committed to a 9-to-5 job, so to say. Not that there's anything wrong with 9-to-5, but for people that are looking to gain more control of their life and their freedom. So going from there, even high school, man, nobody really knows this, but I was helping my mom with her taxes.
Oh, wow.
So even back then, I was learning what it looks like to file your taxes, getting the refunds, organizing your receipts. Didn't know as much as now, but it all started back then. And it reminds me of Steve Jobs in 2015 at the Stanford commencement. his Stanford commencement speech when he says, we don't really understand the pieces of the puzzle while we're presently in them. But when we gather the pieces of the puzzle, we can reflect back, we see where they connect.
Mm.
And so that's where my life is when it comes to business. And after college, I got into multi-level marketing. Nobody wanted to deal with me, but it taught me what rejection is in a not right now, as opposed to taking the no personal. And I feel like that's something that's huge for somebody that's wanting to start their own business, get into doing their own thing, is not being afraid of rejection. And the clients that I work with, we pull up these things when it comes to rejection and limited beliefs and things, and we're able to work through these things to better understand how they're able to maneuver. So Grow With Gregg eventually started with me working on myself. I'm the guinea pig for everything that's out there, not to mention we have the educational credentials, bachelor's and master's to go along with it. But I don't really, it's like, let's get to work, let's connect. And so as I was going through my journey of weight loss and healing and gaining more of a concept of my spirituality and seeing my transformational results, I decided, hey, whatever God is offering me in the form of healing, it's not just for me as a teacher. It's also from within me, through me, to pass down to people that are open to hearing from my particular perspective. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to really transform my own life, but even better, to help God's children and to see them transform as well.
Yeah, no, and I love that. And it's interesting. I mean, whatever your spiritual and or religious practice or lack thereof, what I can say is that, most entrepreneurs, the journey it's deeply personal, and it doesn't always have to be, but that tends to be the circle of entrepreneurs that I sit with and that I work with most of the time, is those that recognize the deeply personal nature of starting a business, particularly based off of a problem that you've had. And, I think the other sort of aspect is that it's not always easy, recognizing the mental resiliency and fortitude. And, sometimes you're having to take, these concepts related to like a leap of faith, for example. You got to try something new, and, you think that you know what it's going to end up like, and maybe you actually have absolutely no idea, but it becomes this process of being able to assess the lay of the land, like your physical reality, and then also like this alignment of your internal, your mind and your heart, and maybe your gut a little bit, in order to make the best decision for you in the moment. And so much of that journey is like also then being able to take a little bit of time to either recognize maybe you made the right choice or the wrong choice, and if it was the wrong choice, it probably wasn't the end of the world, and you can, maybe learn and get better. Or, if you ultimately did make the right choice, it's then being able to reflect on, man, like, why didn't I trust myself before that? You know what I mean? And maybe I
Yeah,
need to do a
yeah.
little bit more of that. And
Exactly,
I think it's getting
exactly.
comfortable with being uncomfortable in so many different ways.
Man, I definitely agree with you that getting uncomfortable aspect, that we're not losing unless we quit. We're learning. So
That
we're
part.
not losing forward, we're learning forward.
Right.
It may take 100 no's or wrong ways just to get it right once. You
Right.
don't have to get it right 100 times. You just got to get it right once. So for me, like you're saying, having that fortitude, I see it almost like a brick wall. And the more I keep pounding and pounding and pounding, eventually that's going to create some impact or some force, and we're going to see some type of result of transition. I'm the type of person, hey, the faster I fail, the faster I learn. So let me be the goofball that asks the stupid questions, that makes the mistakes, because I'm moving forward.
That part.
Now, don't get me wrong. That wasn't me when we were in high school. That wasn't me in college. I didn't want to be wrong. I was showing up for other people as opposed to just showing up for myself.
Mhm.
So I definitely agree with you. Definitely.
I think, maybe you're not giving yourself enough credit. And have you seen that movie Sinners yet?
No,
No, all
not
right.
yet.
You definitely, I think you got to watch it. But the broad lesson for me comes in the case study from Ryan Coogler, the director, who, former athlete. He played wideout at Sacramento State. And
Nice.
I think what you just got done describing, well, number one, this film was he was scared to try it, like, writing an original film. And he wrote it, produced it, directed it. And, it was, I'm assuming, very therapeutic for him that he was able to, bet on himself and win. But, during this press run, he's been communicating that, part of his success is what you just got done describing, which, I think came from his background as an athlete, which allowed him to outwork others and maybe even outwork the version of who he was, yesterday, for example.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure, you were an athlete as well, brother. Talk to us a little bit about, what you learned about yourself as an athlete, and were there any parallels with, who you are today and how that's impacted your journey?
Man, I have to thank my father for literally like forcing me into football. I was a baseball player. So before we went to Palisades, I was playing baseball.
Right, right.
And you talk about childhood wounds. My mother never let me play high school football. So you're going to play high school football.
Right.
That first day of practice in freshman year of Palisades,
Right.
I threw up. I was the slowest. Everybody couldn't stand me. I'm jumping off sides in a drill,
Yeah.
not because I'm tired or not concentrating. I didn't know what offsides was. I had never played football before. So when I talk about literally jumping into it, it's like, yo, I suck. I'm horrible. I'm here.
Right.
And now that I'm in the door, I'm not going to quit.
Right.
That was the thing. I'm not going to quit. So the beginning, the way that I look at particular things is the beginning is always going to be the most challenging, especially when it's something new, because we're foreign to it. But the more we relate to it, the more we connect to it, the more we listen to it, we're going to build the confidence in whatever skill that may be. So even back then in high school, here I am 14 years old, freshman year, I sucked. I sat the bench. I knew I sucked. I told my dad, I said, Dad, I want to go to a football camp. I want to go to these camps at UCLA and USC. I want to get better. I want to learn. That led to a scholarship playing football at Utah State, academic scholarship.
Yeah.
So that right there for me, T, that was the first connection. Here I am, I suck at something, but I didn't quit. So that was the program that I created. My dad wouldn't let me quit. And at that time, I was too scared of my dad to tell him I want to quit. So it's just like, I have no choice. But that was how I learned. Just jump in. It's not now excuse my language, man. I want you to think, we're at a pool, barbecue, summer's coming up, we're at a pool party, and you'll see people take their shirts off and they tiptoe. They want to tip their feet in to see how cold the water. No, entrepreneurship, business, goal setting, whatever that is, for me, it's let's jump in. Because the moment we jump in, now we're conforming to the uncomfortableness. You cannonball in that pool, that water might be cold, but guess what? Your excitement, your energy, now everything is going to conform to that same level of frequency.
Right. Right.
So for me, that was the click. And as we talk about football, weight loss, you and I both, man, we were in high school, we did not look like this.
Right.
Me personally,
right.
My heaviest, I was over 310 pounds.
Wow.
So taking that saying, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to walk. I'm going to climb these stairs. I'm going to work out. I'm going to listen to people that have the results that I'm looking for. That's another thing, man, to me that's huge is I know there's so many people follow celebrities and athletes on social media. I'm following the people who are above me. And I'm the nerd. Hey, how did you do that? Totally. If they reach out, that's awesome. If they don't, I'm putting energy in that direction to get the solution, to get the answer. Right. So I can tell you from the Karen Jones, the Preston Smiles, all of the Michael DiMaggianos, all of these different, I followed them whenever they posted new notifications. I'm like, what did they post? I'm their favorite fan. Hey, how did you do that? And sometimes they even responded, but that's where I started. When I got into mindset transformation, I didn't have the money to join the courses, but I was in their free courses. Whenever they had a free workshop, I was there. So eventually that energy rolled over. And so for me and the people that I get to work with, it's just really coming in tune with when we understand our mindset, that to me is the foundation for whichever direction we're looking to grow. Whether it's losing weight, whether it's health, whether it's business, or even promotion, relationships, romantic relationships, how you think about it here is going to replicate in your reality. The world will tell us everything is outside of us. We got to buy this. We have to invest in these things to look, to feel. You notice they say look great, look healthy. They don't say be healthy, be great. The being part comes from inside.
Totally.
So when we're able to go back inside and pull out what we're looking for to discover, that's the real game changer right there. Now, here's the thing. You and I feel like we're kind of like guides or maybe we use our creative expression to help others, but that's not everybody's creative expression. Sure. So some people need that type of support to open their mind to see the possibilities. That's where coaching, mentorship, depending on the way you see mental health therapy, that could play a major role as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, you said so many great things, brother. And that's, yeah, certainly in the way that you and I have connected, I think, even through the social media age and, not maybe even being in the same circles in the moment, but watching each other from afar and being able to encourage one another. My story, bro. I used to weigh 406 pounds and I lost 170 through diet and exercise and walking, and to your whole point, well, number one, I would just say that was almost like the beginning of me treating, myself as the business in so many different ways, and that I had to figure it out, and it started with me going online and understanding the number of calories that I had to take in a day in order to maintain my body weight and doing some math in terms of, okay, well, if I cut down my calories by 500 calories a day, I'm gonna lose a pound a week just through eating, right? And then slowly, like as I started developing a routine and orienting myself around a program that I could follow, I started walking a little bit and then I started hitting the weights. And what's so interesting is, to your whole point, is that, it was not about doing it by myself, it was about doing it with the right people, the people that saw me, that wanted to encourage me, and whether or not those mentors were miles away and influencers that I was following or books that I was reading or asking people questions in the gym. It was also then being mindful of the way that the negative crowd, right, to your whole point, could also impact me, and recognizing like some of the same folks that were like criticizing me for not being in the gym in the beginning were the same ones that were like, oh, well, why are you even doing this? It's going to take, you're not going to be able to, you know what I'm saying? And so it really became about, again, like treating myself and this is like a concept that we identify in the business world, in my opinion, which is know thyself, right? Know your skills. I call it the 3 P's of purpose-driven entrepreneurship, which is know your past, know the things that, like have impacted you and impacted your story. Like I had to understand that it took me some time to become overweight, and a lot of that was through this recognition of me using food and eating as a coping mechanism, right? To then being able to understand my present so understanding my past, to then being able to understand my present circumstances, right? My present skill sets, my present predicaments, my present path, to then be able to make a prediction on what the future could look like, right? If I was able to reconcile my past and my present. And a lot of that is being a little bit delusional, like being able to see like, hey, this body that I'm in right now, this is not the end all be all. I could be exactly where it is that I want to be. You feel me? If I can make this prediction on what this path could look like based off of my ability to walk it. You feel me?
You're hitting it dead on target. And when I'm hearing you talk right now, I'm hearing a lot of Joe Dispenza. And what happens is, for people that, let's say, even childhood trauma or long-term stress, even long-term physical trauma, we expect it to happen. So even though it's been a part of our past for so long, we've now incorporated our past into our present. So now when we're moving forward, just like you mentioned, T, we're not moving forward with the idea of what we want. We're moving forward with the idea of how this responds back to the past. And so for a lot of people, this is what the challenge is. They're not confident or secure enough in themselves to navigate their past alone. So when they get triggered from the past and something comes up, let's pay attention to the trigger as opposed to the event that actually happened in the past that we can navigate through.
Mm,
It's
mm,
like lanes on the highway. Trauma is going to look like the 405.
right,
It's blocked, it's moving slow, lots of blockages. Remember, if there's blocks, there's no blessings.
right.
So if we're able to navigate the blocks, or even, what do they say, like dilate that particular vessel or make it a little bit bigger, now we have more access to pass. But a lot of people, and you'll hear it in their language, oh, that's hard. That sounds scary. Last time I did that, it didn't work out for me. These are things that's people's subconscious talking. That's not them talking. Most people want to move forward, but they're subconsciously remembering what stopped them before in the past.
So let me ask you, Greg, how did struggling with your confidence impact your professional goals, and ultimately, how did you overcome that?
I would say my biggest struggle with confidence was coming out of autoimmune disorder. For people that don't know, T posted a picture in the past, if you've been following the marketing, the branding. I had a disorder called, what was it called? Topical steroid withdrawal. So even as a child, I was diagnosed with eczema, and I was given a topical ointment with steroids. Now, I wasn't told to use it temporarily. I used that medication from the age of 2 to 33. And when I realized at 33 years old what it was doing to my body, I had horrible withdrawal effects, almost like somebody that's going through substance abuse with methamphetamines, and their body goes through withdrawals. And so that's what I experienced. And through my body going with withdrawals, heavy inflammation, I was allergic to everything. I lost 45 pounds in 4 weeks. I was only eating watermelons and grapes.
Wow.
And this is where, like, when we talk about business, career, legacy, what do you want for yourself for the rest of your life? This is when these things really started hitting me, because you and I both go to school, we get good grades, we do the things that we were told. But now here I am with this health condition that's removed me from work. After 12 weeks of being out of work, they terminated my employment.
Wow.
So I had been working hard for these health benefits, but now that I'm sick, they removed the health benefits that were helping me get better.
Wow. Wow.
As I'm sick, T, not working, I see them repossess the car that I've been working so hard for.
Wow.
Literally, the guy rang the doorbell and he said, hey, if you give me the keys to the car, we won't charge you an extra $250. That's how it was. And while they were repoing the car, I had a mentor on the phone with me. And he said, Greg, I want you to remember this moving forward. If something is truly for you, nobody can take it from you. And for me, when I heard that, that was like a rabbit going down the hole. Like, what do you mean by that? Because I've been told to work so hard for these things, and now my health, they're disappearing. So that took me to a whole nother level as far as what that looks like, to know thyself.
Right.
To understand where you're good, to understand where we can grow, to understand what may trigger you or take you back to previous habits. Understanding those things allowed me to grow. But going back to bring it all together, man, it was the autoimmune disorder that really taught me that, hey, you were depending on doctors. It's time for you to become your best doctor.
Wow.
You were depending on other people's unemployment, disability benefits to take care of your money. No, you get to be your own banker. You get to be your own manager. Because if you're relying for other people for your health, what is that saying for yourself? You're not putting yourself first. You're not trusting thyself enough to move forward based on what your intuition, whatever's coming up. So coming out of the autoimmune disorder, I was used, we're talking about a year and a half, to seeing my skin flaky, oozy, bleeding, just infected, all of those things. And this also reminds me of being big when I was, bigger, going through before weight loss. And where I'm going with this is, even though my body was healed, my mindset still remembered the past of being sick. So when I would go out in public, I would cover my body, I would wear my hood, I'm wearing baggy clothes because I didn't want to be seen. And it wasn't until I worked with a mentor, once again, working with coaches can change your life. I have a mentor by the name of Zion Kim. We're on the phone, he's in an Uber headed to San Diego, and he's like, Greg, everything that you're telling me about yourself now has nothing to do with you now. It's all about how you see yourself from your past, because I'm looking at you on this camera and I don't see how you're talking about your skin to be. It was almost like when I had lost over 150 pounds, I would go back in my 20s, we go party, we go hang out, social events, the ladies are there. I'm wearing tight clothes. They want to touch on my arms and much, but in my mind, I'm still 310 pounds. So that part for me is like, we got to get our mind to catch up to where we are present.
Right.
Maybe even better, we get to get our mind focused on where we see ourselves in the future.
Right.
But then all not being grounded, not getting too far ahead, staying where you are, finding your flow state. Definitely.
Yeah, man. And that's it's very interesting that you talk about that. And that's again where you and I can align. Certainly through this lens of vulnerability, I can communicate, the body dysmorphia associated with, like recognizing that you can have the body, the spirit, whatever it is that you want to have, right? While seeking to eliminate the fear associated with your previous state, and
Yeah.
ways that you coped with the fear before. And there, certainly using the analogy in like the business world, it's, how do you sort of, hey, maybe you started a business several years ago and it was this like colossal failure. And how do you, bring in the lessons of that body to remind you of like, the things to avoid, like the junk food to avoid or the tasks to avoid, right? Versus, also, well, then, and at the same time, recognizing what it takes to ultimately have a healthy body, a healthy organization, rooted in, some of that previous experience that you have, and it can be a little bit tricky, in my opinion, to not live in the past, right? And that's going back to the 3 Ps of purpose-driven entrepreneurship. What I always tell people is that you don't really have the luxury of just being totally in the present and partying and not really thinking about the consequences of your actions, or you don't really have the luxury of totally living in the future and one day it's going to be great or one day it's going to be fine, right? Or worrying about what the future is going to look like. And you also don't really have the luxury of just living in the past, like being nostalgic. And back in my day, you really kind of have to be a time traveler in so many different ways. You have to be able to live in all 3 of those realities in order to live and create, the thing that is what you want to create, right? Versus recognizing sometimes what other people are teaching you to be scared of, in my opinion.
Man, that's powerful. It's powerful. When I hear you say that, and you talk about the 3 different levels, past, present, and future, it also reminds me of 3 different dimensions,
right,
of frequencies, and how we can see them as cut off when in actuality, everything is connected.
They're connected.
And you can see the past, the present, and the future as one instead of 3 separate states.
Right.
Totally different kind of energy.
Right. And that's, that's such this job of being an entrepreneur, and it happens like real quick. You have to be able to remember the consequences of your poor actions, right? While also then being able to sort of assess the lay of the land, right? While then again, to that whole point, right? Being able to understand how maybe a risky bet can maybe pay off, in the future, right?
But here's the thing about risk. In my experience, risk comes without strategy. Risk comes without research.
Right.
If you're not doing your due diligence beforehand, yes, it's going to seem risky. But if you're doing your due diligence before you jump into something, going back to that pool, oh yeah, it's a warm day. That was you jump in, you have an idea of what to anticipate. I'm not going to say expect, but you have an idea of what to anticipate. Now, this is a trend, that I see, and it's unfortunate, but it's the way that we're programmed. We were in school until the age of 17 or 18 years old. Yes, that's school and we're learning, but it's also subconsciously teaching us how to conform. It's teaching us how to pay attention and to fit into the people around us. So something like that is going to say, oh, let me go where I may be tolerated, not necessarily where I'm celebrated. Also with that, if somebody's going into their own business or entrepreneurialism and they've never done it before, this right here is a great opportunity to get to research, know thy system, just as well as you're going to know thyself. Because I'm seeing this trend where people are leaving their 9 to 5, where they're doing 40 hours, making X amount of money, and then now they're doing their own business, entrepreneurialism, and they're working probably 80 hours a week, making less money.
Right.
And one thing with the people that I get to work with, because this is all a process, we're going back with the trauma, we're uprooting some of those things that you believe that are false. And now that we got you at a clear state of mind, it's like, what do you want to do?
That
And
part.
now that we understand that what you want to do, it's also what are your terms? What are your boundaries? Most businesses can be open from a 9 to 5, but how often do you want to be open? Are you opening this business to maximize your revenue or maybe to create more time with your family?
So let me ask you a question then, Greg, just expanding on that. You know, what does mindset over everything mean to you, both personally and professionally?
Mindset over everything to me, T, means that mindset is the foundation for everything that we do.
Mm,
Understanding before we get into anything, the mindset is the roots. It's the seed going into the soil. And how are we nurturing these seeds that we call thoughts before we get into it?
woo, bars.
If we are going into it with doubt, limited beliefs, and all of these different things, what do we think we're going to see in our reality? That's how freaking powerful we are. We are so powerful, whatever we think in here with our mind, the reality has no choice but to prove us right.
Agreed. Agreed.
So for
Oh, sorry.
go
Keep
ahead.
going. No, you please finish that thought. Sorry.
So mindset over everything means before I hop in anything, let me take a look at my mindset.
Well, see, and that's like I wrote an essay about this a while back, or a blog, whatever you want to call it, about delusional dreaming. And what I have learned as an entrepreneur is that, you have to be able to tap into both like your that childlike wonder and the things that bring you joy and the dreaming of like the impossible things, sort of happening and manifesting, while also, right, being able to lean in and do the work required to understand what makes your wildest dream a reality, right?
Yes, yes,
And so one
yes.
of my favorite examples is there was like the 1984 LA Olympics where you had, this group of like really special black female athletes that, won all these medals and beat all these records. And, something that I like to consider, going back to your earlier point, is that sometimes you have to see somebody do something impossible in order for you to recognize that it's actually possible, which is so crazy to think about. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's where you have to be able to lean into a little bit of little bit of delusion, and that, you know what, man, why can't I do that? I think I could do that. You know what I'm saying? Now you got to put in some of that work. You feel me? But like being able to lean in and being able to tap into that hope, that dreaming, that, whatever that childlike wonder, is a skill set that I think that you can nurture and develop with time.
Definitely agree with you. It's a skill set that you can nurture and develop over time. At the same time, T, I feel as if some people's skill set when it comes to that may have been deteriorized in their childhood.
Sure.
So now here we go. We're asking people once again, hey, try again. I know the last time that you tried, you may not have succeeded, but there is still opportunity for you. Here we go again. I know the last time you may have been delusional in your thinking, you were talking like that where you were tolerated. Now where that way of thinking is celebrated. Let's find you a community where people like minds are thinking like you and you're going back and forth with your ideas, as opposed to friends and family who are going off of only what they are known to see. They are living in their senses. Now, hear this out. We see, touch, taste, smell, and hear, right? But I want you to keep this in mind. Those things are going to keep your conscious spirit attracted to the world.
Okay.
It's your intuition, your God-given intuition and abilities that are coming inside of us. So if we need to see it, we need to hear it, we need to feel, think about all our senses and in society, how much of that stuff is lying to us. The food isn't real, the stuff we see isn't fake, but that's where a lot of the energy is being invested as opposed to internally.
Yeah, man. So I guess my next question, and I totally agree with you, that concept of sense making. And how do you make sense of, the really impossible dreams that you want to go after? And so, I'm curious, as it relates to your coaching practice specifically, what's one of the first things that you help your clients unlearn?
I would say one of the first things I help them unlearn is the limited belief that's stopping them from believing in themselves.
Mm-hmm. That part.
So we're navigating in the past to see where these triggers showed up. But usually start with parents. Who was it in your life that gave you some trauma, that gave you some stress, or maybe had you experience things that you shouldn't have experienced at that age?
Right.
When we start to navigate that, because now remember, a lot of people are not going to navigate that alone because it's scary. They actually live that experience. But when they have somebody that they trust to guide them through that experience, it's so much different.
Totally. Well, yeah, man, and that's like it's this really tricky thing, and that and you could have had the best parents, you could have had the worst parents, but what I've recognized, and I think I have pretty good parents, is that letting your parents off the hook comes in the form of the accountability of not blaming them for your problems. Number one, typically, in a lot of cases, your parents love you, which is why they had you. Not all the time. I understand that, right? But like learning to not blame things and people for your circumstances is like the ultimate level of accountability that I've recognized in the business world, and that not everything is going to go the way that maybe you thought it was. And sometimes, that magic is going to happen. However, again, like in the business world, what I've seen is that like when everything goes right, you typically need to give the credit away to your employees and the people that you hire. And when everything goes wrong, you need to take all the credit for it going wrong in order to fix the problem, right?
Yeah.
And so, how that relates to the parent, in my opinion, comes in recognizing that most of the time your parents were just doing the best job that they could, right? And, I'm sure that you maybe probably, empathize with this a little bit now that you're a father, and that when your kid, like, when they hurt themselves, like, you feel that, and you don't want your kid to hurt, and so, when that maybe starts bordering over into overprotection and putting your own fear onto the child, you got to be a little bit careful in that you're not allowing them to get some of the nicks and the bruises and the cuts that are just indicative of being a human in this human experience, this human condition. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes a healthy amount of fear is okay as long as we are progressing and developing confidence and being able to approach our fear with this healthy respect of like what is possible by facing the things that we're scared of, right? Versus allowing our fear to just lock us in a room where we're not living and we're not experiencing anything.
Exactly, man. Exactly. We can fail forward or fear forward or fear stop.
Right.
So I definitely recognize where you're going with that. And I want to put on the clinical therapist hat for a moment because you brought up an interesting point. The state of California has this term called first five. And it's talking about the first 5 years of a child's development. Now, what they don't say in this first five is that typically in the first 5 to 7 years of a child's development, their brain is in theta state.
Okay.
And when our brain is in theta, it's like a sponge. It's not asking questions, it's just absorbing everything. Now, us as adults in our adult years, we see theta state 2 times a day and probably don't even know it. Theta for us as adults is as we're falling into sleep and as we're waking up for sleep. Now, what's happening is a lot of people are grabbing their devices as they're falling to sleep and as they're waking up, and it's blocking that theta state. But what we could really do, if we're wanting to talk about business, entrepreneurialism, we talk about mantras and routines, just envision when you wake up in the morning, I am great, I am amazing, and anything that's coming my way today is taking me towards a direction of learning and growing. If that's what you're telling yourself when your mind is in absorption mode, just imagine what your mind and your cellular antennas are going to go out and attract in this world. All of this stuff is interesting, T, because I'm not a doctor, but when we get outside of Western medicine and their way of thinking, they changed the concept to cells from crystals. They were actually known as crystals that would connect together to create more crystals before they were called cells in the body. So you mean to tell me that we have these special crystals in our body that are literally like they have antennas that are now going towards the direction of what we feel in our internal state?
So, and that, I mean, I think maybe you're doing yourself a little bit of a disservice, and this is your opportunity to brag a little bit. Talk to us a little bit about your professional background in the form, or your educational background, I should say, what you've learned as a result of, getting your degrees and maybe some of the certifications, and how that has then impacted, the way that you coach and the way that you work with some of your clients.
That's a really interesting and great topic to bring up. I graduated bachelor's psychology and sociology from Utah State. I finished a degree in professional counseling at Grand Canyon University, and that opened the door for me to become registered and do counseling in the state of California. To be completely honest with you, man, and I'm grateful for the office where I get to practice my treatment. This is more of a spiritual direction as opposed to a clinical direction.
Wow.
The clinical allows me in the door, but a lot of what I'm talking about or working with my patients and the clients, this is where we are. This is where they are. These are things that I'm noticing, and I may reference back to clinical therapy. But for me, therapy is not about clinical. It's not about those things. It's about connecting where that person is at that moment.
Sure.
I can be on a call with somebody who's suicidal, depressive, and literally hop off of a call and go with somebody that's up here, hyperactive. So understanding where people are is huge when it comes to consulting, therapy, working with people in general.
Wow.
And for me, T, I use a lot more of my personal experience, the things that I've learned outside of traditional education, to the people that are open with it to help them open up and discover more of themselves.
Wow, I love that. And yeah, man, and that's, and I think that you have to have a healthy mix of, the qualitative and the quantitative, is a way that I sort of think about it. And I think that, the qualitative can maybe be, like, what is the quality of life that you want, right? Versus the quantitative of, well, how many experiments have you run in order to achieve the quality of life that, you sort of want, right?
Exactly.
And I think that you need like a healthy mix of the two. Now, what I think is fascinating is, like you have empowered and embraced, again, like the quantitative, the numbers associated with therapy. However, it sounds like as though a lot of your practice is individualized and personalized based off of, again, just like your understanding of the mental, spiritual, emotional state of the clients that you work with, and you sort of combine the two in order to create a pathway, right, for your clients to get to where it is that they would want to be. Would you say that that's correct?
I would say that you're hitting it on target. For me, it's more about meeting them where they are and holding their hand, guiding them through it. Now, what I'm noticing working with men is that a lot of men are apprehensive to therapy or mentorship, consulting. Ego's in the way. So
Okay.
for me, I feel that it's huge. I have guys that say, "Oh, you're not my therapist, you're my life coach." Man, call me whatever you want to call me. I don't care. You're still getting results.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Yeah.
And I'll let people know. They're like, "Gregg, when are we going to start therapy?" I said, "Man, we started therapy 3 weeks ago." And they're like, "But it feels like we're just talking." I said, "That's exactly what therapy with me looks like." That it's not in the sense of here is how I show up as a therapist and it's one size fits all. It's me being able to literally identify where the person is. And that really starts, T, by listening to how they're talking to themselves. And so when I hear certain things, the limited beliefs, the doubts, the insecurities, I will challenge them. Is this something you want to work on? Or is this something you want to learn how to cope and maneuver through? Because we can get to the solution and move forward, or we can learn how to deal with the emotions as they come up. And a lot of men don't know how to deal with the emotion or even connect to the feeling of what the emotion is.
So let me ask you a question then, and I love that response. Well, so it's a two-parter, and
Mm-hmm.
and I want to be mindful of time. The first question is, what advice would you give to someone who feels stuck but doesn't know where to start? And then the follow-up is, how did you begin to integrate the business formation aspect into your coaching and into the therapy? Because I know that you focus on helping with the development of LLCs and trusts. Like, how did that, sort of roll into some of like the personal growth coaching that you offer and provide?
Definitely. Ask me that first question again because you kind of got
Oh, yeah,
distorted.
yeah. Sorry about that. I was saying, what's the biggest, or excuse me, what advice would you give to someone who feels stuck but doesn't know where to start?
Okay. The advice that I would give to somebody who feels stuck is this is a good question. Slow down a bit. Where is the tension or resistance coming from? And what I mean by that is it coming from outside or is it coming from inside? Is this, and this is where we're starting to go back and become detective in our lives. Is this you talking to yourself or is this somebody talking to you? That's two different things. We can eliminate the person that's saying the negative things and maybe that can change your frequency. But if it's you, then we know that this is rooted within you, not that you're hearing from someone else. So that's where we would start. Where is the noise coming from? And if it's coming from you, this is the question that I'll leave up next. If you are the voice that is listening inside, who is the voice that is talking to you?
Love that.
Because now we're starting to really identify that I am not the thoughts that come through me. I don't control the thoughts that come through me. But I can change what I'm putting energy to and listening to. I can also change the end of the story. Just keep, for example, I'm not good enough. That may be something that somebody constantly tells themselves, but that's the voice. That's not them. Just like you were talking about screenwriting, we're all characters. We're all actors. And we can come in and reclaim what we know to be true. That was last year. That was 12 years ago. I wasn't good enough 12. I'm good now. I can move forward. And that's where we start.
Yeah.
That's where we start. Now you had another question as far as, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I love what I call is who are you? YOU, which is an acronym for your own understanding. And we all need to be able to develop and understand our understanding of things, right? Including ourselves. And, so the next part of the question, though, was related to, and I think I know how you got here, but I would just want to hear in your own words, how did you begin to integrate the business formation aspect into your practice and into your coaching and as a service? Because I know that you help with the establishment of LLCs, with the establishment of like family trusts, et cetera, et cetera. How did that start happening?
Yeah, definitely. So it originates from me making extra money in high school by organizing my mom's receipts for her business.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's how it started. Now, going back into the autoimmune disorder, that was me really navigating life, I would say, as a man on my own compared to having the support of others. In the sense, once again, if I am going to play this game we call life, I want to learn the rules. And so I ask you this, man. You ever play Monopoly?
Of course.
You ever read the rules?
No.
Now, that's how most people are living life.
That part.
When it comes to business, when it comes to taxes, when it comes to all of these things that we freak out about, nobody's read the rules. Now, here I am, man. I was out of work for 2.5 years. I'm like, shit, I got time to learn the rules. And that was something I learned from that same mentor. Me and my ego, I didn't know how to read, man. Here I am, a master's graduate, and I didn't know how to read. And this is what I mean by that. I could read a book and finish it, but I couldn't go back and tell you what I read.
Sure.
It would take me maybe 7 times to read one paragraph to fully grasp. And to me, I couldn't read. But now my mentor told me, he's like, Greg, most people live in their ego. And when they see words or sentences that don't make sense, they just skip over it. He says, I challenge you to look it up. And when I started doing that, it changed my life because I would read law. I would read the IRS manual. Remember, man, my car got evicted. I got evicted from my apartment. My car got repossessed. I had all of these negative things on my credit. I thought that was what I needed at the time. So I was like, how can I get better? How can I build these businesses? Learn how I did in high school to save the receipts from payment purchases and use those to offset expenses. That's where it all started. And it gravitated towards, this was back during the pandemic and the PPP loans, right? This is when I initially started. I had gotten better hear me out, man. T, are you okay if we go over time?
A little bit,
Oh,
yeah. I've got a hard stop at like 2:40, so we got a little bit of time.
okay. I'll tell the story briefly. So I get better from the autoimmune disorder, and instantly I start applying for jobs. I go back to the programming that my mom that I'm used to. I'm
Mhm.
applying for jobs at T-Mobile and AT&T. I get a job at AT&T. I get past the interview, all of these things, as I expected, because I've done that so much in the past. And then I go to my mom. She's like, "What's wrong? You just got a new job. You're going to start work." I said, "But I feel like I'm better than this job."
That part.
And she said, "I do too, son." And so literally the next week, I started reaching out to people. Hey, for $60, I'll apply for your PPP loans.
Mm.
And people were getting paid. I'm talking thousands and thousands and thousands, and I'm charging $60.
Right.
So I said, no, we got to switch this up. 10%.
Okay.
And that changed the game, T.
Right.
That changed the game for me. So I said, if I can do this here, I can take this and put it in consulting. I can take it in clinical therapy and start my own practice. I can take what I know about LLCs, trust, estates, and all those different things and build clientele over there. So now we have a scaling business to where we can work with somebody with trauma, and then we can go from trauma, getting your business started,
That
getting
part.
your private trust and all of these things set up. So
That
now
part.
you're moving forward.
That part.
Or we can just, hey, Greg, I need a private trust set up for my children. Cool. I'm about to go through a divorce. I need to hide some assets. No problem. But it's just like we have a full range now, and almost like an agency. And what we're doing with it now, T, is we're leaving the LLC business aspect and we're going into private organizations, ministries, and donations.
Mm.
So now we're creating community through educational ministry on how people can learn these steps themselves and teaching generational wealth for their entire families. Don't
Wow.
come to me for the service, come to us to learn.
I love that. Yeah, and that's, I mean, so many ways to consider it. I mean, I think that everybody should have a business. And even if you have a day job, I certainly believe that everybody should have a business or, aspirations around there. And I think, some of that comes in the form of understanding your mission statement, your vision statement, and your core values. And that then I think comes in the form of also recognizing your value proposition, the value, the service that you can offer other people, right? That nobody else can offer but you. And a lot of that is typically rooted in personal levels of integrity related to your skill sets. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people, they just don't value themselves. They're not on mission. They're not on purpose. They don't recognize what the world could look like if they were to solve problems that they just take for granted that other people really value that they can freaking do.
And that's the thing right there, man. So for me, when I'm working with people, it's like I get where you are. Tell me where you want to be.
That part.
And then tell me how much you're willing to work to get there.
That part. That part.
You gotta be hungry, type of thing, man. Definitely.
So I got two more questions for you before, or three more before we head out.
Sure.
This first question is, what habits or routines have helped you sustain growth personally and professionally?
That's a good one. I would say my personal habits are huge.
Yeah.
So for me, that's in the morning when I wake up. It's different now having baby Molly, but it's like I get to find my movement, moving my body, any tension blockages. So for me, it's yoga, it's stretching, swimming, meditation, prayer, any of those things that I can do in the morning to get my day in a positive start. Now, after that, T, I'm going to be real with you, man. Typically, throughout Monday through Wednesday, I have 10 patient calls in the office. So for me, it's almost like the New York Stock Exchange. I got until 6 o'clock because I'm in Mexico. I got until 6 p.m. to get as much business in for the day that I can outside of therapy. So as I'm working with my clients, I'm also thinking, what else can I do that allows me to be productive in this business day? So whether that's filing a trust, I just got off the phone with the IRS before our call today. Us being in Mexico, I was at the U.S. Embassy the day before. Next week, I have a trial with the client for California EDD on overpayment. So I'm literally stepping in different doors, doing different things to open my horizon. The other day, I had a judge call me back as we're trying to work a deal on the case. I'm not a lawyer, but we're making these things happen. So when we talk about being delusional, I'm on cloud 9 right now because this is me being delusional, but I show up. And people are trusting me more than they may trust their bar card attorney when it comes to representing them with the IRS, with the EDD, for those different things. So for me, it's like, if these people are going to trust me with what they have going on, I get to do my part to show up with the full cup. Because if I show up with a half cup and I'm trying to pour into something else, it's not going to work for me. I get to be full, and my overflow is what's supporting others.
Sorry, I gotta plug it.
It's cool, man.
Right over here. Sorry about that.
It's all good, man.
So, what's one leadership lesson you've learned the hard way, and how do you teach it now?
This is something that I will share. I share this with probably a lot of the men that I work with, but it's not for everybody.
Okay.
Imagine living life like everything is your fault. And you're holding yourself accountable for everything that happens in your life. She did this, he did that, they didn't show up. But just keep this in mind. Whenever you're pointing the finger at them, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you.
That part. That part. I love that. Total accountability. Well, my brother, we've had such an amazing conversation, and I'm sure that we're going to have more. My final question is how, what do you have going on? How can people get in touch with you? What's the best way for people to work with you, should they choose that they would like to do so?
Most definitely. So on social media, Instagram, Grow With Gregg. That's GROWWITH, Same for the website, growwithgregg.com. And also Gregg at growwithgregg.com for the email address. As far as what we have going on, man, in July, we're going to Arizona there's a National Eczema Association. Man, I wish we had more time, but I've been working with the National Eczema Association after the autoimmune disorder. So I get to do some work with them in Arizona. We're going to LA in July. Hopefully we can connect while we're out there. We're going to have our baby girl's birthday party. With the family in there. Man, we've had contracts that are finishing up with the Department of Defense, a bunch of different pharmaceutical contracts, Leo Pharmaceutical, Sanofi, Amgen, just to name a few that we've been working with in the private side as well. So we're constantly doing a lot of work, but all of the work that we're doing is not posted and publicized.
That part. No doubt, bro. And so, definitely, and, I would love for you to host you in Joshua Tree, and definitely we got to figure out a way. I think it will maybe be dope for us to collab on something our big thing has been corporate retreats at Black Cactus. So maybe, we're planning on leading a trip to Japan with some other entrepreneurs, but maybe we can get a group of entrepreneurs down in Mexico. We could figure out something dope that way.
I'm getting the chills because I just got off a call with somebody here in Mexico, and we were talking about doing corporate retreats in the state of Mexico in a spiritual town in the mountains of Mexico. So it's already connected, my brother.
You feel me?
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing, brother. So, maybe let's start thinking about, our next interview. I'll start thinking through maybe a couple topics, and I know that there's more for others to learn just based off of, both of our skill sets. So, this is not the end all be all.
Most definitely, T. And I want to put this out there before we end the call. I would love to give the people some free information. Okay. So maybe that could look like setting up, it's not about the money for me, teaching people setting up an LLC, understanding the difference between a trust account and a regular account, whatever it is that can bring value to the people that they can take and apply.
That part. And I got some customers or some people that I'm coaching that I could recommend to you just for that. So, more on that to come. Okay. Maybe we can figure out a joint offer or something. Okay.
Sounds like a plan, man. Be safe out there.
All right, brother. It's great catching up. See you soon.
Likewise, man. Take care. God bless.